All right, so here it is, the huge, exciting package that we've been waiting for a while.
Ta-da!
Welcome back. My name is Aladino, and together with my wife Maya, we are refitting a Cape George Cutter 36. We started a while back doing a lot of structural things. We've opened up the decks, rebuilt them back up with new deck beams. We have torn apart most of the interior, rebuilt it from the ground up. But one thing that has happened mostly behind the scenes was a lot of research. And that research was about how we are going to repower the boat. I knew pretty much from the start that we had to repower. The boat came with a dysfunctional, not complete BMW. So we figured you could bring it back to life, but that would have been the channel in and of its own, which is not our goal. And we didn't want to set out with an engine that is hard to get parts for. So instead, the idea was, well, maybe sell this one to somebody who can benefit from getting the parts if they already have one. But we are going to start fresh.
Oh, hi there.
Oh, hi! I have started preparing the hoist to get the engine out. So if this all works as planned, we get it up and then I will pull it and you let go slowly. The huge, exciting package that we've been waiting for a while. Patrons over from Vancouver Island, they were generous enough to actually offer to bring it over. So yeah, Bob and Kathy, thank you so much for lending a hand in bringing over this exciting package.
Huge thank you.
Yeah. Have we said what it is yet?
No, well let's unveil it.
Let's unveil it.
Oh, there we go. That gives you a little bit of a clue.
That gives all the clues. So yeah, it's our brand new Beta Marine diesel engine, which I'm gonna share a lot more about. But for now, yeah, let's get it off the truck.
Ta-da!
I love it. Guess the main reason why we chose it, this brand over others.
Because it's red?
Exactly. No, there is many more reasons that I will list, but I love the color. Yeah, we have to name it. Should it be the Red Beast or Ferrari? Enzo? Should we call it Enzo?
Let's call it Enzo.
So, yeah.
I actually love that. Yeah, it's Enzo from now on.
Of course, there is a lot of technical details to share here with you guys, but first, let's put this package away.
Do you have a pallet or something ready for? Oh, is
Yeah.
that? Okay, never mind.
Got to go a bit higher to touch it, or yeah, I think it is good now. We also aren't quite ready to install the engine yet. We're just going to put it away for now, but it's good to have it here. I can take actual reference measurements off of the engine instead of just from the drawings that I have. Just compare, make sure. And one big thing is that we're installing an aqua drive, so I still have to glass in a bulkhead for that, but it's very good to have the engine here now. Wow, here it is. We made it. And again, huge thanks to Bob and Kathy for bringing it over. The reason why I say bringing it over is because Ben Gardside is the Canadian distributor, and he is over on Vancouver Island. So it is a ferry ride away. Thanks to Ben himself at Gardside Marine. He's been super helpful at so many questions, responding to all of them. Because one huge benefit of these engines is the amount of customization that you can get, and of course that needs a lot of back and forth and questions and emails. Ben really is the place to go for that. And huge thanks also to Charlene. She has helped us pay a really big chunk of the price of this engine, which is just blows us away. That is so generous, really incredible. Thank you so much, Charlene. Yeah, shall we dive in? What is it? So we have chosen Beta 43. Beta is a Kubota block. So Kubota blocks are super common in tractors and just heavy duty machinery with parts available all over the world. Beta does marinize them in the UK. It seems like things are going well for them, and they have distributors all over the world. Because you do need some specialized parts, of course, for marinized diesels, like heat exchanger and raw water pumps and stuff like that. So this is not a stock engine though. Well, I mean it is, sorry. What I mean though is there's many customizations on here, which we will dive into. Engines per se aren't really my field of expertise. I had to do a lot of maintenance on them, which is just the basic winterizing or put in a new starter, change alternator, this and that, which of course leads to a little amount of experience, but it's not my passion and it's not anywhere close to my full-time job. So it was crucial to get help from Scott and from Maya's dad, who is a marine engineer by trade.
So we're here with my dad, who has spent probably at this point hundreds of hours helping Aladino to research what engine we decided to get. Typically what I try to do when I make these videos is to turn it into a story that would be interesting even for people who aren't necessarily fascinated by the nuts and bolts of boat building. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that in this case. This will be much more of a technical discussion. I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Have at it.
Thank you.
The first part of the discussion was we had to figure out how much horsepower we needed. Mm-hmm. The Cape George came with an older BMW engine which was obsolete and parts weren't available anymore, and it was underpowered.
Yeah.
We didn't exactly know how underpowered, but you did some research of other Cape Georges that had been repowered.
Well, one thing that struck me with that is that it's also sometimes personal. Everybody uses a boat differently. So I talked to some owners who were super pleased with 30 horsepowers, and I had some that said, oh, you need 70 at least. It's totally underpowered. So I guess it depends on the use as well. But then that's why we dove into it more with the formulas and more accurate calculations instead of just going with personal flavor
and rough guesses. Yeah. A big shout out to a naval architect named Dave Gare, who has written a number of books. The two of my go-to books of his were Nature of Boats and the Propeller book, and I went through the calculations and came up with 43 horsepower, 42.2, which was the best fit for the Cape George 36. Oddly, when I spoke to one of the distributors of a Beta engine in North Vancouver, and I said it's a Cape George 36, he asked me the displacement of it, and I told him 23,300 pounds, which is 10.4 tons displacement. And he said, oh, well, it's 4 horsepower per ton. So he came up with a very rough ballpark figure of 42 horsepower, and through all my calculations with Dave Gare, we came up with 43. So that's a very simple rule of thumb for anybody making a quick guess, is 4 horsepower per ton of displacement.
Totally. And what we really appreciated in the beta is that they offer such a broad range. The lowest one starts at 10 horsepower, and then it goes all the way up to 115, and they have 20 different engines to meet your very specific horsepower requirements.
We managed to find one, the Beta 43, which fit our requirements quite perfectly. And there were other good points, advantages to the Beta, and you've got a list of some of those.
Yeah, totally. Well, one thing that we wanted is a fully mechanically injected and governed engine. We personally chose to stay away from the newest, which is the high pressure common rail systems.
Yeah, those high pressure common rail systems, they're a newer technology. They've existed on larger vessels for a long time. They do come with significant problems of specialized tools that are needed and specialized equipment that's needed. And one of the most significant problems is the fuel requirements. You have to have absolutely incredibly clean fuel, because some of these systems are operating as high as 40,000 pounds per square inch pressure, and that's enormously high. That's super high. And you need the specialized tools and equipment to make that happen, and the super clean fuel. The current technology in filtration to keep fuel that clean that's going to the engine. The companies that make the technology that's putting those filters out, they just haven't really kept up in a convenient way that's readily available off the shelf. And for an international voyaging boat, that compounds the problem even further.
They make perfect sense if you have a home base and a dock and a certified technician in your city that can also come by with the dongle, plug it in, read what is going on if you do get a fault. And also maybe that is a better way how you can ensure clean fuel. But for our needs of wanting to sail to remote places, we cannot guarantee that. The network of technicians is not readily available yet, and that's why we chose to go with something fully mechanical. Another point that made these engines highly desirable is the customization. There is so much that you can customize, and then it gets delivered to you in a complete package, all done either at the factory or at the distributor. And that is definitely something that we appreciated, because we have chosen quite a few of these extras to make the installation easier and better.
Yeah, a significant one was the footprint where the engine mounts attached to the Cape George. For the BMW, the older engine, they weren't anywhere near the same as the Betas. And Aladino and we made our measurements and came up with a spacing for the vibration mounts of the Beta that would perfectly suit the existing engine mounts. And Beta UK just created that new footprint for us, and that's the way it arrived in the crate. It was fabulous.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool process.
Yeah.
We took the measurements, then we sent them over. They have a very nice form of what measurements you have to take. So we did that, and then they send you back a CAD drawing so that you can visualize it and think it through again. Does it really work out this way? Is this the way you want it? And then you sign the form, and when they received it signed, then that's how they will build your engine mounts for you. And it all comes at a very fair price. That is also worth mentioning. All these customizations, I thought that they were very competitively and fairly priced.
Yeah, and another thing that you wanted was a second alternator. You specified which alternator you wanted and how and where it should fit, and they made that happen for you as well.
One very nice thing is that they use serpentine belts, which are highly recommendable when you have bigger alternators, which is really a no-brainer on boats that you want to spend a long time on. A big way of getting power. So with these wide belts with grooves, you can put a lot more load onto an alternator. And as you can see, we've added a second one here. This one here is the bracket to tension it, and this here is where the secondary alternator can be installed. So this is the stock, and over here now we could have a secondary one. And they do offer already a broad range of alternators, but if it is one outside of the range, which it was in our case, I bought it, I supplied it to them, and then they had it in hand, and they could therefore make the mounts and add the second serpentine pulley to have it installed in the best location.
And then also they had an oil pump. So for making oil changes a lot easier, it's having a separately mounted, manually operated pump to draw the oil out of the crankcase before you put the new in is super handy. And that is also an option that Beta gives you to connect it to the transmission. Yeah. So you can change the transmission out at the same time.
Well, I just wanted to say that the pump comes standard, but we had a connection added to also pump out the gearbox oil. Exactly. Oh, okay, that's an addition.
Right.
This pump is to extract the oil, so it's going to make oil changes easier, and we have added a valve here and also an additional line going to the gearbox. So I can shut down this valve, open this one, and then I'm just doing oil change in the gearbox, or vice versa. I can just do the engine, or I can do both. So that is pretty cool. And we have upgraded our gearbox. We went with something that is a little bigger sized and a little more for continuous duty. And this one is hydraulic. It's a PRM 150. Not many engine manufacturers offer too much range in gearboxes. Sometimes you're tied to a very specific propeller size, or you want to match it to a propeller that you already have. So that was also something that we appreciated there.
Yeah, if I recall, there were 4 different choices of gearbox that were available, and each one of those 4 choices came in 2 gear ratio ranges. The one that we chose suited the RPM requirements of the propeller the best. Again, the Dave Gare books, in his propeller book, he had algorithms and graphs and charts that really helped you figure out the RPM requirements of pushing the boat through the water with the propeller. We had chosen the Beta 43. We had a prop already that came with the vessel. Then you try and have to match that with the RPM, so that at the correct RPM you have that good match of power absorbed by the propeller being the full RPM power of the engine. And to get that, we found it was just a little bit over a 2.0 gear ratio, and the PRM 150, the transmission that we chose, is a 2.09. So that fit really perfectly, and it seemed like a really good transmission as well, in that it allowed trailering.
Totally. Yeah, it allows free wheeling. So that is something that it's a future idea, but maybe I'll want to play with the idea of adding a shaft generator, so that we can regenerate power like electric propulsion boats can. Yeah, it's been an old thing. It's not that it came with electric engines, but that is one benefit they say of the electric engines, because you can regenerate power. So it's not the ideal boat. It's not the fastest boat, and there is a lot of dead wood just in front of the propeller. So it is just an idea for the future. And as you can see, it also comes with an oil cooler, which is this here that they've added, which is done very nicely. I was wondering if the oil cooler would just come in a box and I would have to stick it on the bulkhead or something like that, but this is built on, which is pretty cool. This is the first look for me as well, but yeah, here in the front we've got the raw water pump. I guess this one here would be the fuel filter. Where's the oil filter? The oil filter is here, accessible from the front. That is nice. This one here is the heat exchanger, and then here is the riser, which again, it can be chosen to be in many different heights. That depends if your engine is either above the water line or below. We chose to go with a high one, and then they also do crossover, because some engines have the exhaust system on starboard, so then you can have this one crossing over. So that is pretty cool. We just went with the high rise here, no crossover. Well, and then along with, we're gonna have a water heater, so we got fittings to connect the water heater. That's an extra. I also want to say huge thanks to Ben Gardside. He was a pleasure to work with and super helpful. I don't understand all these things on the first sentence, and he was very patient of walking us through all the options, getting back at us with drawings and further explanation and clarification. So that made the process really smooth, easy, and fun. Canada somehow manages to have very competitive pricing on the beta engines. Not sure exactly, but maybe it's because of some tax treaty with the UK where these engines come from. But we were actually, a little shocked and surprised at how much better the pricing was up here in Canada. And you have agreed to make the document with your calculations available? Because then I think on who wants to geek out on those very specific calculations, then they can.
That's I'm more than happy. They're kind of rough notes that I made for myself. They are kind of logical for me, but maybe a little bit difficult to follow. And in those notes, I did refer to graphs in those 2 Dave Gare books. So the graphs aren't in my notes. To fully understand and to get a way better understanding of the whole process, those 2 Dave Gare books is what really solidified it for me.
Oh, and maybe we should have mentioned this at the beginning, but one thing that comes back to mind is that since beta offers such a huge range, for a while we were tempted to actually go with the 38 horsepower engine. Because it would be a little lighter, a little smaller, just give you more room to work around the engine. But the difference there was the RPM. We were tempted to go with the bigger one because it maxes out at 3,000 RPM.
2,800.
2,800 even, yeah. And we thought that cruising RPM then will be much lower than if you chose the higher RPM engine, and that just comes down to having a little less noise and vibration and a better night's sleep.
Yeah, cruising RPM is an interesting subject in itself, in that the torque curve that you get on an engine is not the same as the power curve. As RPM increases, then the power just continuously increases. But it comes a point before that the torque, as it increases, it hits a peak and then comes back down again. And it's that peak point where you want to try and establish your best cruising. Because at that peak point, you're pulling out as much power as you can get out of the engine the most efficiently. The propeller curve, as I said before, comes concave this way. Torque curve comes this way, and the distance in between is just power that you're not utilizing. So what that really means is that your amount of fuel that you're using is significantly reduced at that point. If you're running at top RPM, you're consuming a lot of fuel. If you knock it off 10%, you're saving 30% of fuel.
Totally.
And if you knock it down to that peak torque, you're saving about 75% of fuel from the top fuel consumption of the engine at top RPM.
Don't run your engines on low RPM though. That's not good for them. They like to run hot.
They like to run hot, and you're going to get that temperature, but they like to run with a lot of load. And if you're running it at peak torque, then you're putting the load on it, right? So that's a great cruising speed. And for the Beta 43 for your boat, that came out to 1,800 RPM.
Yeah.
1,800 RPM, and
which is a relatively low, a low pleasant rumble.
And in good conditions, in smooth water, that would give you almost 5 knots, a touch under 5 knots. And if you bumped it up to 2,000 or 2,100, you're not significantly increasing your fuel consumption, which is a great benefit. And then you're doing 6 knots.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a really comfortable cruising speed. And a comfortable cruising RPM and good fuel economy.
Yeah. Well, last and not least, let's not forget that these engines are Ferrari red, and that is, if not the most important selling point, definitely worth mentioning. Yeah. Can we expect to see you help along with the installation?
In my orange coveralls, you betcha.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, Dad, for all of your help. I can attest to the fact that honestly, for the past few years, ever since we bought this boat, every time we visit my parents at their house, these two spend every single evening sitting together talking about engines. So the amount of hours that you guys have spent discussing this, I'm actually shocked at how brief you kept this. So thank you. That must have taken considerable summarization.
Well, and there is 3 of us. We're actually the 3 musketeers. So also shout out to Scott, who gave us a lot of
long emails, which I countered with my own long emails. Yeah, it was great conversations that we had with Scott. Totally. That was really good.
Yeah. So I really learned a lot and appreciated all the input.
Yeah, and Scott has more definite small boat experience, more than I do for sure. My engineering experience is on commercial and larger vessels. That was a great sidebar to my knowledge in that you're applying the same engineering principles and concepts to smaller boats and smaller requirements, and with the equipment that's available to you for small boats on the market. Yeah, totally. And Scott has great information about that. A real good back and forth between the 2 of us, and Aladino, of course, the 3 of us, and it was lots of fun.
But I can attest to the fact that the emails were terrifying in their length. I was homeschooled. My brother and I were homeschooled for most of our schooling. We went to high school later, and Mum and Dad have each earned their separate reputations. Mum for the brevity of her responses, and Dad for the incredible length. And I have never before met somebody who can match Dad, or even, compete with him and sometimes win in length. And Scott is that person. So the 2 of them combined have basically wrote like a PhD thesis at this point.
We have never actually met. But Maya and Aladino are both scared for the day that we do.
All right, so that's that.
Okay, well, questions, and I'm sure there will be some. We will try to respond to them in the comments. And thanks, Dad. Thanks, Teeny.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Love both of you guys. Good job.
You too. Thank you for watching. It's been a really exciting, monumental step. So excited to have the engine here and to put it into the boat soon. It's just all becoming more real. And we want to thank you all for following along till here, and in that way also enable us to do so and have arrived here. Thanks for your comments and for your support. Huge thanks to all the patrons, and a big thanks to the names now appearing on the screen. And we will see you all next Friday.